Welcome to The Future is Electric. As you can tell, I am not in a car today. We're here in the studio, and we're here to discuss insurance when related to electric vehicles. We're discussing battery damage, we're discussing water damage, and much, much more. My name is Luke. Hit subscribe if you haven't, and this is The Future is Electric. So I'd like to introduce today's guest, Mr. Francis Valletta, with over 30 years experience in the motor insurance industry. Thank you for joining us.
My pleasure.
First, let's get started. What is the difference in an insurance policy for an electric vehicle versus, say, an internal combustion engine vehicle?
Look, in reality, the standard motor policy, and here we're talking about the comprehensive policy, is suited equally well to an electric vehicle as much as it is to an ICE vehicle. Okay, there are certain features of electric vehicles that need perhaps a bit more attention, but in reality, the cover that is provided is more than adequate for an EV.
Right, so what are the things that are different?
Okay, for instance, you can have damage to the accessories or to the cable. You can have a liability arising, for example, if someone trips over the charging cable. You can have damage to the battery caused by lightning. So these are specific to electric vehicles, but as I said, they are normally covered by a standard motor comprehensive policy.
I'd like to take a moment to thank our sponsor for today, GasanMamo Insurance. So if you're looking for insurance for your EV, PHEV, or any other vehicle really, be sure to check out the offers they have at the moment. So as far as I know, what affects the insurance premium is the engine cubic capacity. So obviously an electric vehicle doesn't have this. So what is affecting the insurance premium here?
Okay, so motor insurers, when they price the risk, so that is calculate the premium to charge for a vehicle, they take two main factors into consideration: the driver risk and the vehicle risk. So the driver risk is the obvious one, the age, claims experience of the person. The vehicle risk is, as you say, normally measured by the size of the engine, and also the weight of the vehicle is a factor. So with electric vehicles, we don't have cubic capacity, which is our standard measurement. So we use, obviously, the power it generates, kilowatts. We need to keep in mind as well that electric vehicles reach peak power much faster than an ICE vehicle. But insurers take that into consideration. Insurance is based on statistics, on data. So what really matters ultimately is claims experience. And another factor which I think will matter as well is the cost to repair, because that will affect the premium as well.
Right. Do insurers consider electric vehicles safer than ICE vehicles?
EVs are modern cars, so they are as safe as any other modern car, even if it's an ICE engine, because they have all those safety features like adaptive cruise control, ABS, lane assist, and all these help in reducing the number of accidents. Even the construction of the vehicle itself, it's using ultra high strength steel, so it protects the passenger and the driver better in serious cases. So yes, if you consider that modern cars, EVs are fairly modern, they are generally safer.
So I think the question that always comes up is, obviously the battery is the single most expensive component in an electric vehicle. Does the insurance cover you if there is damage to the battery in an accident, say? And follow up to that, the battery is very expensive. Do you foresee the costs coming down?
Yes. First of all, definitely the battery is part of the vehicle, and so the full protection given by the policy applies as well to the battery itself. And as you say, the cost of an electric vehicle is higher than that of an ICE vehicle if you take away the grant. And one of the reasons is the battery cost. And whatever you read, the indications are that battery costs are going down. In 2021, in the US, it was calculated that the battery cost went down to $132 per kilowatt, which is a 6% drop on the previous year. And they expect that by 2025, that value will drop down to the target, the $100 per kilowatt. Whether that will mean price parity for the manufacturers or the cost to produce an EV will be equal to that of an ICE, we'll have to wait. But certainly, I think the expectation is that technology will improve. We might see different types of batteries, solid state, for instance, and all these changes will probably help make the battery less expensive. Also, a factor is the repairability of the battery. What insurers would like to see is that if a battery is damaged, you don't have to replace the entire battery, but to be able to repair it.
So here's where I'm a bit skeptical, right? So right now, an electric vehicle, if you look at the same car, and some common electric and petrol, the grant is 12,000 euros.
Right.
And even after the grant, there is still around 3,000 euros or more to reach the exact same price point. So are we saying that in 3 to 4 years' time, as the battery cost comes down, we're actually going to win back these 15,000 euros?
It sounds like a lot. I think in Malta, things perhaps happen a bit later than they do in bigger countries. I think the US, they're saying yes, by 2025, 2026, they might see that. It might take a bit longer for Malta because there are other factors that affect the price. The fact we're an island, the transportation costs, we've seen transportation costs rise tremendously after the pandemic. But I have no doubt that in a few years' time, whether that's going to be 3 or 7 or more, we will see the prices going down.
Right. So it's not just the battery. Could it be the fact that the mass production? And
that as well. The more vehicles that are produced, the cost will definitely go down.
Right. Coming back to damage on the battery, I was always told that even in like a small bumper to bumper, it's not what you're seeing on the outside, but it's what's happened underneath. And obviously underneath now I have this very expensive battery. Are surveyors able to check if there was any damage to the battery in even a small accident?
Right. In fact, yes, I think surveyors are trained to look at the damage entirely. So what you might see will mislead you because you think the damage is minor, and then when you actually check what's behind that, you will see that there is a lot more damage. Surveyors are trained abroad most of the time. They keep up with latest technology, so they are trained to look at EVs in particular and assess that damage. But what really matters is that the repairer that's handling that vehicle has the tools, the diagnostic equipment to check the battery if there is suspected damage to it. Now, remember, the batteries in electric vehicles are very well protected, so it needs quite a large impact, so a bumper to bumper is probably not going to affect it. But if there is doubt that there is damage to the battery, you need to have the right diagnostic tools to check it out.
So when there is a claim, what problems are insurers facing in regards to the repairs of electric vehicles? Okay,
I think there is the feeling that to repair an electric vehicle at the moment is costlier than an equivalent ICE vehicle. And there are a number of reasons for that. One is that there are few repairers who are really fully equipped to handle electric vehicles. Secondly, there is a process as well to make the vehicle safe. You need to do a lockout or a tagout on the battery. You might need to remove the battery and replace it. Even to source certain parts, it may take longer. Also because there aren't as many electric vehicles as there are ICE vehicles. So these are all causing the repair cost to be slightly higher than that of an ICE. Again, we think this will change as repairers become better trained, more equipped, and as we have more and more ICE vehicles, then these issues with sourcing parts will reduce.
So what if you look at like hybrids? We've had hybrids now for 20 years in Malta, probably. I assume the battery process of unplugging it and whatnot when there are repairs is similar, no?
It depends a lot on the manufacturer of the vehicle because you can find quite a lot of differences. Some batteries are simple to remove and replace. Others, you need a special calibration tool to recalibrate the battery before fitting it in. Other models require the battery to be kept on charge using special equipment. Right. So it really varies a lot. And I think, again, probably with time, we'll see more standardization here.
Right. So some claims experienced, if you look at abroad, is that there are less claims for electric vehicles. Is this the case here?
The problem is we don't have enough data. In Malta, only 1.6% of the registered vehicles are either EVs or PHEVs. And in insurance, data is the most important thing when it comes to calculating premiums and assessing risk. And even in the UK, they have 10% of the cars there which are electric, and that is over around 400,000 vehicles. They still feel they don't have enough data. The information available at the moment indicates that the probability for the reason rather why they have a better risk experience, claims experience, is because of the type of drivers rather than the type of vehicle on its own. Because the people who tend to buy electric vehicles tend to be young, higher income earners, urban dwellers, and generally these people have a better risk profile than the general risk profile. So that could be a reason. But again, this is a question of time. As more and more data is available, we can be more certain about things like this.
Right. So now, jumping to a slightly different topic, one of the questions that always comes up is, should you insure the vehicle, EV or plug-in hybrid, for the cost with the grant, without the grant? Because obviously that's a 12,000 euros, which makes a big difference.
Okay. Our recommendation as insurers is always to insure for the full value.
With the grant?
With the grant, including the grant, because you cannot be sure that if you need to replace your car in the case of a total loss, you're able to claim that grant again. First of all, there is a 3-year limit on being able to sell the car before having to refund the grant. So if you sell it within the first 36 months, you need to refund the grant. And if a car is rendered what we call a constructive total loss, which means it's not economic to repair it, but it's still repairable, what happens in that case, the insurer will probably sell the wreck to someone else who will probably repair it. And that sale would trigger the refund of the grant. So certainly our recommendation is to be sure, insure for the full value. There is also the risk that the grants might change, and if you come to replace it, the grants might be different.
Right. So so an electric car is obviously charged using a wall port, and it can be in your home, and it can be out in the street in the public network. Are you covered from any problems which may arise from the charging of the car?
No, typically, a motor policy will always exclude mechanical or electrical failure, unless obviously it leads to an accident, because that would be covered. But the electrical failure itself or the mechanical failure itself is not. So in cases of power damage whilst it's charging, you would have to go to the supplier of that service to claim compensation. The standard policy will not cover that.
Okay, so another sort of, let's say, risk that comes up while charging is the risk of a fire. Now, I don't want to alarm anyone here. Statistically, and correct me if I'm wrong, an internal combustion engine car at the moment is still more probable to catch fire randomly than an electric vehicle. So that is the statistics at the moment. But there have been recalls on electric vehicles because of the risk of fire. So we have to discuss it. Are you covered if suddenly your car catches fire while charging?
Absolutely. The comprehensive cover, even a fire and theft policy, which offers lower cover than comprehensive, will cover damage by fire, however it's caused. Now, as you rightly say, in ICE vehicles, you can have a fuel leak which triggers a fire. You don't have that risk with electric vehicles, or a short circuit, but the risk is there similar. However, yes, certainly the insurance policies cover the fire risk entirely.
It's good to note, maybe people don't know, that an electric vehicle always disconnects the high voltage battery when you park. So some do it right away, some do it after 2 minutes, but you'll hear it's a physical connection which unplugs the battery, which is high voltage.
It's an important safety feature, right?
Exactly. So in Malta, we get a lot of days of sunshine and then a lot of rain all at once, and everywhere floods. Are you covered for flooding?
Yes, again, ICE vehicle.
The battery is very low in the vehicle.
It's low, but it also has inbuilt safety features, so it will cut off to reduce the risk of damage if it's exposed to water. I think the advice we would give here is, whether you're driving an EV or an ICE, be careful when you're driving down a flooded road. If you see that there are other vehicles that are stalled, stop, turn back. But if, and we have had claims like this where flood waters damage cars.
Which were parked, for example.
Which were parked, and you can't do anything about it. Obviously, that is covered. Luckily, we don't have many, but when we do, we have a lot of claims.
So, looking forward now, how are insurance seeing EVs changing sort of the landscape of things?
No, what we can see is EVs are the future, at least until another technology comes up which offers a better solution. to the problems of climate change and so on. However, I think what will change and what will cause more people to buy EVs as well is a cutoff date, which we are still waiting for as a country.
So just to explain this, so in nearly all the, in many countries around the world, especially the developed nations, they've established a date when they will no longer allow the sale of petrol or diesel, internal combustion engine vehicles. So the leaders of this are Norway, as early as 2025. Most of the world is at 2030, and some other nations all the way extending to 2040. In Malta, we do not have this date yet. It's been sort of mentioned that we're going to hear the date, but till this point, there is no date. How does not having that date affect insurance, affect drivers?
Well, I think like anything else, when you have a target, when you have a milestone, you can work towards it. So once people know that if it's going to be 2030, by 2030 you'll only be able to buy EVs, I think that is also in itself creates a push to the importers and to people looking for cars to go for an EV. I think we can also expect to see a shift in commercial fleets of vehicles where owners go towards EVs also because there are incentives for them to do so. And I think we will see this change happening. People will get also used to driving electric vehicles. There are still, I think, people who have the wrong idea about driving an EV, and I think the work you do is helping to send the right message out. And I think, therefore, as like any new technology, it takes some time, but once then it's adopted, it will grow exponentially. Right.
So last question. What is your advice for those buying an EV on how to insure their car?
Look, insurance is based on trust. It's not the price that matters really, or the cover, because if you compare cover provided by different insurers, you'll find very little differences. I think ultimately it's the reputation of the insurance company, because what you want is that when you do have a problem, and you will at one point, you are going to have a collision, you are going to have a problem, you want to make sure that the company you're dealing with is serious, professional, and it's there to help you resolve that problem. So I think that is the most important factor any buyer of insurance should consider.
All right. So thank you, Mr. Francis Valletta, for your time. I'd like to also thank our crew here today, Peter on the cameras, Miles on the sound. I'd like to thank Stargate Studios for the studio space today, and GasanMamo once again for sponsoring this video. I hope this conversation has helped you in agreeing that the future is electric.